Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. I've been getting a lot of questions from subscribers, a lot of requests for different videos, and this is one that's come across my desk. So I just really wanted to break it down and go over it. Now, who is the next Floyd Mayweather? As you know, Floyd Mayweather was an elite level fighter. He was one of the best fighters to ever do it, and he basically was the best fighter of this past era. Now you have, other fighters at this point taking over the boxing game, such as Canelo Alvarez, such as Anthony Joshua. But who is the next Floyd Mayweather in the 147-pound division? The next guy to transcend weight classes, the next guy to be an elite level superstar, the next guy to do a lot of things and, make huge paydays to transcend the sport of boxing. Who's that next guy that's going to be able to do that right now? And out of the current guys that we have three potential candidates. So let's just break it down. Let's start with Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. is one of those potential candidates. Errol Spence Jr. and Mikey Garcia, according to ESPN.com, they've stated that, Errol Spence Jr. and Mikey Garcia's most recent fight did over 360,000 pay-per-view buys. Now that's a very good start in pay-per-view. If you're the type of fighter, that's your first pay-per-view, you're headlining. These guys sold about 50,000 tickets in the AT&T Stadium in Dallas. So Errol Spence Jr., coming off of a really good pay-per-view, but he's still very far away from 1 million pay-per-view buys. But that's still a very good and promising start, especially against a guy like Mikey Garcia, capturing a larger fan base. Errol Spence Jr. put on a very impressive and dominant performance against Mikey Garcia, so you can't take anything away from him. And when you look at this situation, you have to say, hey, this guy has the potential of being, the next Floyd Mayweather, the next dominant guy in the division. But when you break down Errol Spence Jr. and you look at it a little bit closer, you realize that Errol Spence Jr. doesn't have a top-level resume. He fought guys at the right time, and he also fought a lot of smaller guys. Like he's fought Mikey Garcia, who moved up in weight. He fought Carlos Ocampo, a domestic-level fighter. He fought Lamont Peterson, who moved up in weight. Chris Algieri, who moved up in weight. And he fought a Kell Brook coming off a knockout loss. So there's a lot of asterisks on a lot of things on his resume. Now, Errol Spence Jr. is a top-level fighter. I think he's the second best welterweight in the division, and he could potentially beat anyone in the welterweight division. But I think looking at his resume, looking at the eye test, looking at what he's done, I can't put him and pin him as the next guy because he hasn't shown to be defensively responsible in any of his fights except against Mikey Garcia, who was moving up 2 divisions in weight class and who gave up enormous height and reach. So when you look at that, you see Errol Spence Jr. using those boxing skills and defensive abilities against a guy like this. You would see that, why hasn't he done that against other fighters, other welterweights? Why would you all of a sudden, choose to box against a smaller fighter instead of running through him? Why were you unable to stop him? So when you want to say Floyd Mayweather, we're talking about the most dominant force in the division. And it doesn't matter about your particular style. It just means, if you're going to be a dominant force. And I see a lot of holes in Errol Spence Jr.'s game. That doesn't mean he can't still be the top fighter at welterweight, but it just means there are holes and things that people can exploit much more easily. And then you look at the next fighter, you look at a Keith one-time Thurman, you look at Keith Thurman being a very good fighter. He's beat Sean Porter, he's beat Danny Garcia, but he didn't blow those guys out. So he has probably the best resume in the welterweight division. But the problem with Keith Thurman is injuries have cost him a lot of time, and may have even cost him a part of his prime in his career. Because if you look at Keith Thurman at this point, he could compete boxing-wise with any welterweight in the division. He would give Errol Spence Jr. and, Terence Bud Crawford problems. Even Terence Bud Crawford said, the hardest fight, what people think would be against Errol Spence would probably be the easiest fight. And then the easiest fight, which you would think would be Keith Thurman, would probably be the hardest fights, because there's levels to this in boxing. There's different dimensions, and guys show different levels of game and skill. And, Keith Thurman is a guy who's proven to be able to be a superior boxer, pure boxer at the welterweight division, unlike Errol Spence. He's not the bulldozer that Errol Spence Jr. is, but he is a better boxer than Errol Spence Jr. But the problem with Keith Thurman is he was almost stopped against Josecito Lopez in his most recent fight. So when you look at Keith Thurman, you see that he still has a lot of issues coming back. And will he ever be the same fighter? We don't know that as of yet. We don't know if Keith Thurman will still be the same fighter. We don't know if Keith Thurman can be the fighter that he once was. And if he can reclaim that, then Keith Thurman definitely could be the next Floyd. But we don't know that as of yet. And as of right now, looking at the Keith Thurman that we saw against Josecito, the same Keith Thurman that's constantly injured and coming off of injuries, we can't put him as the next Floyd of the welterweight division as being the most dominant force. There's too many holes there, and the fact that you're getting stopped by a fighter the level of a Josecito Lopez, and he didn't get stopped but came very close, is not showing a lot of promise for Keith one-time Thurman. I think Thurman needs a few more tune-ups just to see exactly what level he's going to be on going forward. Then you get to Terence "Bud" Crawford. The most diverse boxer in the welterweight division. The guy moved up in weight. And not only did he move up in weight, he proved that he could handle fighters that were massively bigger than him, such as a Jose Benavidez. Jose Benavidez, by the way, who people say, had a bum leg. But yet Jose Benavidez scored 2 straight knockouts before fighting Terence Crawford. So I find that very funny that guys use convenient excuses. Guys say they're 100% healthy, they're ready to go, coming off of 2 straight knockout victories. And then when you face Terence Crawford, you have a knee, excuse after the fight. I don't like excuses. If you're going to say it, then say it. Be honest and unbiased. We all know that Jose Benavidez was just simply making an excuse, and fanboys ran with it. Then you look at Terence Crawford, other opponent of Jeff Horn. Now, whether you thought Jeff Horn beat Manny Pacquiao, whether you thought he lost to Manny Pacquiao, that's irrelevant. What you do know is when he fought Manny Pacquiao, he gave Manny Pacquiao one of the most difficult fights of his career. It was a knockdown, drag out. It was a very exhausting fight. And Terence Crawford took this same Jeff Horn that many pundits, including Errol Spence Jr., say will cause Terence Crawford problems because of the sheer size of Jeff Horn, a guy that could be fighting at 154 pounds, and who's even stated that he could fight at 160. And this is a Terence Crawford moving up in his first fight from 140 pounds, came in, not only beat Jeff Horn, won every single round, and also stopped him and became a world champion in his first fight in the welterweight division. That shows an elite level skill set. The fact that Terence Crawford is able to switch, from orthodox to southpaw and back. The fact that Terence Crawford has elite level defense, elite level boxing, great foot movement, great hand speed. He has all the intangibles of being a dominant force because he checks off every box in every category. He's proven to be an elite level fighter. He's a pound for pound fighter. Some people have him 1, 2, or 3. And when you look at Terence Crawford, especially at 140 pounds, he also has the resume. A lot of guys say his resume is weak, his resume is this. He's had very quality wins. And the funny thing about Terence Crawford is, he not only has the belt, he showed that at 140 pounds, becoming undisputed and dominating the entire division, and then moving up and planning on dominating this one. Terence Crawford has to be the most dominant force, has to be considered the most dominant force. He's already making guys like Errol Spence Jr. avoid him, saying, that they're looking to take the easy road. You have guys like Keith Thurman saying that, Terence Crawford, hasn't done enough, hasn't proven himself, yet he's a world champion. Yet you can fight Josecito Lopez, but not Terence Crawford. You fought Lopez, who you feel is not good enough, but you won't fight Terence Crawford, who you feel is not good enough equally, and he has a belt. Why not take the easy belt if that's the case? Because he knows Terence Crawford is probably the best fighter in the division. He has the most dominant skill set because he has a variety of skill sets, a variety of ways he can fight. He can fight up like Floyd Mayweather, but he can also fight more aggressively and go for the knockout. That's the main difference with Terence "Bud" Crawford. So at this point, if I have to pinpoint the next Floyd Mayweather Jr. as far as being the most dominant force at the welterweight division, as far as being the best fighter at the welterweight division, a guy that can transcend weight classes, a guy that can become that superstar based off skill, talents, and dominance, I have to give it to Terence "Bud" Crawford. But once again, unbiased as always, it's the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.